Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cold Blood Files, where we uncover chilling truths, shocking crimes, and the darkest corners of the human mind. Today, we're diving into a massacre that not only shook the entire nation of Australia but forced the whole world to ask, how could a man with the IQ of a child pull off one of the deadliest mass shootings in modern history? He wasn't a trained soldier, not a radical extremist, and certainly not a criminal mastermind. He was someone doctors once warned could pose a danger to society, and then, in a single day, he took 35 innocent lives. But this isn't just a story about bullets and blood. This is a terrifying reminder of what happens when we ignore red flags, overlook mental instability, and allow isolation to fester unchecked. What you're about to hear is more than a true crime story. It's a national tragedy, a psychological case study, and perhaps the loudest wake-up call a country could receive. So don't look away, because what follows is the disturbing descent of Martin Bryant, and the horrifying legacy of the Port Arthur massacre. Imagine a boy walking down the hallway of his school, shoulders hunched, eyes darting, never making eye contact. The other kids laugh at him, never with him. Teachers say he's slow, but that word doesn't even scratch the surface. By the age of 10, Martin Bryant was already marked as different, and not in a good way. His IQ? Just 66. His diagnoses? Learning disabilities. His reality? Isolation. Confusion. Rage without a name. From the outside, he looked like an awkward child who couldn't fit in. But on the inside, something much darker was brewing. "Why do they all hate me?" he once asked his mother, after being excluded from yet another school activity. Another time, after killing a neighbor's pet bird with a slingshot, he calmly told the man, "It was only a stupid bird. Why are you crying?" People thought he was cruel. Others thought he was just dumb. But the truth? He was both neglected and emotionally dysregulated, an unstable child in a world that offered no guidance. Martin didn't just fall through the cracks. He was the crack, growing wider, deeper, more dangerous every year. By the time he turned 14, even professionals admitted they couldn't help him. A psychologist once wrote in a report, "He cannot relate to other people. He expresses no remorse, no empathy. He will likely never be able to live independently." Yet he did. And not only did he survive on his own, he would eventually thrive in chaos. In a world that refused to accept him, Martin started building a world of his own. One where rules didn't apply. One where pain was power. But no one was paying attention. Not his teachers. Not his parents. Not the system. And so, Martin Bryant grew up, alone, angry, misunderstood, and completely invisible to the very people who could have stopped what came next. After years of rejection and isolation, Martin Bryant's life took a strange and unexpected turn. He entered a peculiar relationship with an older, wealthy woman named Helen Harvey, a reclusive figure known for living in a crumbling mansion filled with dozens of cats and dogs. To most people in the town, she was that crazy rich old lady. But to Martin, she became something more, perhaps the first person in his life who didn't treat him like a burden. "I liked her," Martin once said. "She didn't yell at me like my mum did. She smiled at me, and gave me anything I wanted." Helen took him to fancy restaurants, let him spend freely, and even handed over control of household decisions. Imagine giving a child the keys to a kingdom, and no rules to follow. Then came the mysterious accident. In 1992, Martin was behind the wheel when their car veered off a quiet road. Helen died on the spot. Martin walked away without a scratch. Authorities ruled it an accident. No charges were filed. But whispers spread quickly. Was it really just bad luck, or something more sinister? One thing was undeniable: Martin inherited everything. Land, property, money, freedom, and no one to stop him. "Now I have everything," he would later say in a chilling interview. And still, no one to talk to. That haunting loneliness, buried beneath sudden wealth, began to rot from the inside. From that moment on, Martin Bryant's descent into darkness accelerated. After Helen Harvey's death and the sudden inheritance of a vast fortune, Martin Bryant stepped into a life most could only dream of. But he wasn't living a dream, he was drifting in a storm of loneliness, paranoia, and delusion, with no one to anchor him. Martin didn't work. He had no friends. No romantic relationships. Just guns, alcohol, and a mind growing darker by the day. He walked into town, people avoided him. He spoke, people ignored him. He acted strange, people chuckled and moved on. Some saw him mimicking sniper poses in his yard, pretending to shoot at tourists. Others caught him giggling after killing animals with an air rifle. "I just wanted to see what it felt like to scare someone," he once told a neighbor who confronted him. Even worse were the things he said in passing. "One day, I'll do something the whole world will remember. I hate tourists. They're taking the life I was supposed to have." But no one took him seriously. Everyone wrote him off as weird, but harmless. That misjudgment would later cost 35 innocent lives. Years before the massacre, a psychologist warned, "Martin displays signs of personality disorder. He shows no empathy, no remorse, and poses a high risk to society if not monitored." Yet no one monitored him. No one intervened. Legally, his behavior hadn't crossed a line, and the law only reacts after the crime has been committed. The clues were always there. His words, his obsessions, his isolation. But society was too busy, too indifferent, or too afraid to dig deeper. Martin Bryant didn't become a monster overnight. He was slowly falling into darkness, and no one was watching. April 28, 1996. The sun was shining over the peaceful Port Arthur historic site in Tasmania. Tourists strolled through the old prison ruins, unaware that one visitor among them would soon drench this land in blood. His name was Martin Bryant. He didn't walk into history. He exploded into it, with bullets and fire. Before reaching Port Arthur, Bryant stopped at the Seascape Guesthouse, a property he'd once tried to buy but was rejected. There, he murdered David and Sally Martin, the owners. Some say it was personal. But the true motive remains buried in his twisted mind. Then he loaded semi-automatic weapons, shotguns, and hundreds of rounds into his car and drove off, toward a nightmare. At the busy cafe, Bryant sat near the window with a strange-looking sports bag. He ordered a meal. No one noticed anything unusual. Then he stood up, pulled out an AR-15, and started firing. The sound was deafening. People dropped instantly. There was blood, screaming, panic, and then silence. A survivor later recalled, In less than 90 seconds, 20 people were dead. No time to react. No warning. Just violence. He left the cafe and shot a mother and her 2 young children. He hijacked a car, then killed 4 more people at a toll booth. This wasn't a spree. This was a massacre. People ran. Some played dead. Others hid behind trees. But Bryant hunted them, one by one. Bryant returned to Seascape, kidnapped a man named Glenn Pears along the way, and barricaded himself inside the house. He torched a stolen car in front and prepared for war. Police arrived quickly. A 17-hour standoff began, with gunfire, smoke, and eerie silence in turns. By morning, they stormed the house. Bryant was captured alive. The hostage, Glenn Pears, was dead. "I did it, because I wanted people to remember me," Bryant told police, with chilling calm. The Port Arthur massacre remains Australia's deadliest mass shooting. It shattered the country's sense of safety forever. Martin Bryant, a man with an IQ of 66, a history of social rejection, and a dangerous obsession with power, had committed an atrocity no one thought him capable of. After 17 harrowing hours barricaded inside the Seascape guesthouse, Martin Bryant was captured alive, his face burned, but still wearing that unnerving smirk. When the police asked why he did it, his answer was chilling. "I just wanted people to know who I was, like those famous people in America." Bryant faced 35 counts of murder, among other charges. But what stunned the public wasn't just the number of lives he had taken, it was his eerie calmness in court. He didn't cry. He didn't apologize. And when a witness spoke through tears about losing loved ones, Bryant laughed. That moment shattered any remaining illusion that this man felt remorse. Experts noted Bryant's IQ was only 66, comparable to that of a primary school child. Some argued he lacked the capacity to fully understand his actions. But the law had to speak on behalf of the 35 lives lost. In the end, the court sentenced him to 35 life sentences, without the possibility of parole. He will die behind bars. The massacre ignited an unprecedented wave of grief and fury across Australia. People took to the streets. The question on everyone's lips: how could someone like him get such deadly weapons so easily? Just 12 days later, the government passed the National Firearms Agreement, the strictest gun control legislation in Australian history. Banned semi-automatic and automatic rifles. Launched a nationwide gun buyback program. Introduced mandatory background checks and licensing. Over 650,000 firearms were surrendered and destroyed. Since the Port Arthur massacre in 1996, Australia has not experienced another mass shooting on that scale. Martin Bryant, though a symbol of devastation, inadvertently triggered one of the most successful gun reforms in the world. Martin Bryant wasn't a typical criminal. He wasn't driven by ideology, nor did he act out of vengeance. He wasn't part of a group or movement. He was a lonely, disturbed man, slipping through the cracks of society. Some experts argue he suffered from antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic traits, and low cognitive function, a deadly mix of emotional emptiness and impulsive rage, fueled by years of isolation and a lack of support. But can that explain what he did? No explanation feels adequate. No psychological label can justify or truly clarify the magnitude of the horror he caused. Martin Bryant didn't hide in the shadows. He was out there, saying disturbing things, mimicking violence, showing signs of dangerous detachment. People noticed, but did nothing. He was mocked, ignored, dismissed. But never helped. Never stopped. The true horror is not just the 35 lives lost that day, it's that many of those deaths might have been prevented if someone had acted sooner. The Port Arthur massacre isn't just a crime story, it's a mirror. It reflects the flaws in how we treat mental illness. It reveals the cracks in our systems for preventing violence. It shows how easy access to guns combined with unchecked psychological distress can lead to catastrophic consequences. But above all, it shows how dangerous silence can be. When warning signs are ignored, when strange behavior is laughed off, when troubled people are left to drown in their thoughts, tragedy becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Martin Bryant wanted fame. He wanted the world to remember him. But the real legacy doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the 35 innocent people who died, to the families who carry their memory, and to a nation that rose from grief to create real change. Let this story be a reminder. We cannot afford to look away. Not from warning signs. Not from mental illness. And not from the systems that need fixing. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the psychology behind the darkest crimes in history. Until next time, stay aware, stay compassionate, and never stop asking why.